Okay. All right. Okay. So yes. Yeah. Yes. Screen is visible. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Screen is visible. Ravi. Pressure. Uh, all right. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Yes. I will check. I will check. You can discuss with management team. They will give you access. Okay. All right. So okay. So at the last that we will discuss all about the SQL injection related issue, where we discuss that how we can secure that the SQL injection in both parameter, and then we will discuss that about the parameterized SQL injection, right? Now today that we are going to discuss that all about the session related issue. So we will discuss that about the session related issue. We will discuss all about session management. So we will see that how we can test for a session management, secure code testing for a session management. So basically it was very easy issue, and we can easily, means we have the simple one function to secure that the session IDs, right? So session management from a code review perspective, so we just focus only on to the session ID, right? Like once that the user was logging on to the any application, then browser was create a one session ID for that, right? And then it was login with this session ID. So if anyhow this session ID was intercepted by the attacker, so in that case it was see and access that the current user session access with the help of the session ID. So all the authenticated user should have that session IDs, right? The session identifier, we can select the session ID which was generated once that the user was logging on to the application, and the logic of the creating the session ID that available from the code level when we start that the session, and then we can see once that the user was logged in, then it was stored that, and it was stored in a cookie by default, right? And the function also was fixed php sys in php, means you just see the sys, this one, right? This one was maybe the change depend on to that the language sometime in JSP, ASP and all, but yes, the session ID was stored in a always in a cookie. So when we authorize onto the application, so user was give that the proper request, valid request, and once it was successfully authenticate, then it was like in browser it was create a one session ID. So session ID is vulnerable when we can see this ID was not renew automatically, or we can say that ID was same all the time, right? For example, when you log in with that the admin, and this type of the attack is known as session fixation attack, right? So we can see how we can mitigate with that the session fixation attack. So the first of all, the most common issue with the session attack is that the session hijacking, where the attacker was tried to access that the session ID. Session fixation means that where the session was fixed, once you go back, you see that the session was not destroyed properly. So in that case, it is just like a small function that we have to destroy session properly. In many application, you see when you log out, but when you press back button, you still see that the session was active. You still see that the user was logged in. So this is known as a session was not destroyed properly. And one attack is a session hijacking. Basically, it was done with the help of the cookie also. So in that case, if you hide that the session from cookies, so in that case there is very less chance to get the session ID. But sometime that the attacker was access this session ID from the headers also, right? In case if you hide that the cookie, as last that we already discussed that how we can hide that the cookies are there, right? In a cookie injection session ID, sometimes that the attacker also try to get from the headers also, right? So in that case we see like how we can secure the user session IDs, valid session identifier, and then we can see like how actually it was login onto the application, right? So in that case, if it is any attacker, then what the attacker actually was do that, so attacker was try to see this type of the session ID, right? Like once that it was login, then it was try to see that the what are the data was available in the cookie, is all about in the PHP SSID, right? It was available in the HTTP request header, we can say that. And also it was try to capture from the some other tools, for example like in a Bubshoot tool that we have that the feature of the capture the session ID and all, right? Capture all that the header basically, right? Because the session ID was stored in a header, and in a cookie also it was stored, right? So it was allow an attacker to do like login with the improper authentication, right? Without having that the password directly, it was try to log in the what we can say the session ID, right? So let's see that simple practically how the session was implement and how we can secure that the session then. Okay, so the first of all that requires a simple login form. Name is the username, all right, and basically that I have that the form, and I will just copy and paste directly. Okay, so here okay, so this is all the normal login form. Okay, and here that we can see form action is the hash, like once that you can log in, then it was redirecting onto this page. Now here in this page, let's write the backend code for PHP. So right now that I will not connecting to database, we directly log in without any credential. Basically we need to see like the how was the session was work, right? We can also give that the valid credential also, that we can just check with the simple logic of the SQL query. But right now we just log in with the normal any credential. Our focus is to just see the session ID, right? So if it is set the dollar post username, okay, according to the username I will create it, and then we will start the session. This is the same function in all language to start the session. It will start once it was validated properly. Before this we just insert the SQL queries to see that the credentials was available correct or not. Right now we will not check with the SQL, directly I will create only session. Then we can give the name of the session. I will just write a normal name. In a session we store over the username. Sometime it was means in real time it was stored both username and password, right? So here we post that the username, and once it was login, then it was redirect on to the next page, which is called the profile.php. Okay, so in a profile.php, okay, so in a profile.php we will create a normal just welcome message. So if it is not set the dollar session name header, that means if any user directly come on to the profile.php without login, so in that case again it was redirecting on to the main page. If it is not, then we create a session name, and here we will create a simple HTML, and then here we create a simple message is the hello dollar name, because in our the name we store actual the session ID. Alright, so this is over the actual session page, vulnerable session. Okay, it is not a secure one, it is a vulnerable session page. Now here, what was the actually vulnerability? If you go on to that the browser, you will see that. So let's start. Okay, so now if I log in with the normal user, hit the enter, it was not redirecting. Let me just quickly check what was happened. Yes, okay, correct. Now again it was not login. Let me see what happened. Okay, yes, submit button we will, yes, if it is said that the session was start, and if it is said $post to the username, and then we start that the session, then here we post that the username, and then we redirecting here, and in our the form we don't need to do anything special in a form. Yes, in action, and the method is also that the post, which was okay, input type equals to also submit, name is also submit. It was login now, see. Okay, so here we can see it was login and it was redirecting onto the profile.php. Now quickly just see what was actually issue it is. So if you go here, and if you go onto the memory, I think in a storage, yes. So in a storage you see it was give it to you the some PHP ID, right? Ignore this username and all this other cookie. So this is what the PHP ID. Okay, and if I copy and paste here, now let's log in again with the same username. Okay, so okay, and now right now you can see there is no any data, and once I submit again, and then again that we can see, so you can see that the data is almost same, right? So this session ID is same for the current user, right? If I will log in with the other user, then obviously it was changed, but if I just log in with any other user, let me just try to log in with any other user. Let's suppose the user, it is user cookies, and if I give this ID here, okay, it was I think it was not it was not destroy properly. Let me destroy again. Okay, here we log in with inspect, go to the storage, and let's try to change the value. See, it was login with the user, right? Because, and you see that what I do, that I will just replace the session ID, right? That was we generate previously, right? So this is how it was work, because the user session ID is fixed. It was generated only one time and it was permanently stored in a cookie. What actually happens here, why it is vulnerable? Because when we stored that the browser will store the session ID like this one, it is for what? User. So it is permanently stored in a cookie, right? This session ID is permanently stored in a cookie for the username user. All right. So in that case, we know, like, if any attacker are there, and if it is anyhow it was see this session ID using the cross-site scripting attack, and many other attacks are, many other techniques are there. If anyhow it was see this type of the session ID, so we know it is vulnerable. Now for that, how we can secure it? Simply what we can do, once the user was login, right? Once we log in onto the login from the user, then what we do, we remove the session ID and regenerate the session ID for the same user. So there are the many options are there. You can also give that regenerate the session ID in every request, right? So once you log in, then we see that it was regenerated session ID. Once you refresh the page again, the session ID was changed. Previously was destroyed and it was create a new one. So if the attacker was get the session ID, then it was see that the previous session ID, not the updated one. Because in that case also, if attacker want to use the session ID, then without refreshing, without sending the request, obviously that no one user and no one can log in onto that. For example, here, if I just copy and paste the session ID without refreshing, we will not see that the request and all, right? But in that case, what happened? If the any user, attacker or any normal user, if just hit onto the refresh page or just send the any single request, so in that case what happened, it was regenerate the new session ID for this particular user, right? And we know, like, when the data was intercepted, so in that case the attacker will see that the current session ID, not the latest one, because latest one will generate after completing the request. After you intercepting the complete request, then you will get the new session ID in the browser, which was stored in a cookie. So this is how we use the logic, and this is how what the concept that we use to regenerate the session ID. And the concept is very simple. The code is also that very simple. We just regenerate the session ID, right? How we can do that? So simple. First of all, we just go on to that the code here. And here I will just do that the one more code in, like, here in this example that I just missed, that in case if the user is already logged in, then it was not give the message that you are already logged in, right? So I will create a one more extra code as per side of the developer, because we see that the one more code are there. If you go on to that the session page again, then again it is asked for you to the login, but basically if you see in previous step you are already logged in. So in that case it was displayed the message that you are already logged in, then why we need to give the credential again and again? Okay, so here for that what we do, if the session was already set, okay, here I will write that the code session start, and if is set session, I will write the uname session, then already logged in. And if it is not like now here we create a one more code, actual code, okay, actual server side code. Once it was submitted, like once you submit the form, then we create a session name of the session, I create a uname, in uname post the username, and then the code was same, location profile.php. In our profile.php code was same, okay, and if you want to create only the server side, if we not required any client side, so we can also do that, right? I will just write the simple code, if is set, if it is set the session uname, so we'll write that the message echo welcome and whatever session ID it is. And otherwise if it is not, give that permission denied, because you don't write the correct credential, obviously. Okay, so now this is all that the simple code, and now to secure this one, what we can do, just go onto that the code where you will start that the session. See in this page here we start the session, so after this session start we write simple one function is called the session regenerate ID, right? Now the same code we write on to the profile.php page also, but here we already generate that, right? So here we just pass that the one argument is the true, right? Because we are already generated. Now we don't need to regenerate session ID here again. But why we pass that the true here? Because we already set here, and here after the session starts, remember that you can use session regenerate ID anywhere in the code, but the best approach and the best thing is that go after the session start, right? This is a session start function. After that write that the code session regenerate ID, right? Now the code was same, all the things are the same, right? So let me just close all the browser and let's start again. Session, and here if I will log in with a normal user, submit it, see welcome user, right? And now you can just go on to the inspect, eliminate, storage, and see current session ID, right, for the user. Once you refresh it, now you can see that the ID was changed. See, I will just copy that, and if I paste here, okay, and see user here, when I refresh it again, if you go here, see now the user is same, right, but the session ID was different, right? So this is how actually that the session regenerate ID was work. It was regenerate the ID all the time when you refresh the website or when you send any request onto the website, right? So this is how that we can secure that the session related issues, and it is very easy. Here you don't need to use any specific logic for that. This all are the code, you know that it is a developer end code. It is simple basic login page. So what you need to do that, just go onto that the code. First page is always index page, remember that, right? In a first page you don't need to write the true here. After that the page which was linked with the index page, see here, once you log in that, then where it was redirecting profile.php, right? So that means what, this profile page is linked with the index page. Whatever the function, whatever the variable that we use from the index page, obviously. So in that case, if you see, both page are the same code, right, like almost like a link together. So in that case, whatever the page was linked, you can just use that the pass that the true here, right, because you already regenerated the session ID for that. The same code, it was in a JSP and in a PHP, the syntax was changed, only the function is only the one. So in short, if you see how we can secure the code, just go onto that the code where you see the session start. After that, just put this function session regenerate ID, right, in all that the code. Just find that where was session will start, and most probably you will get this code session start in the top of the code. Okay, so this is how we can secure the issue related to the session, right? This is how that we can secure that the code for the session related issues. Only the thing is we need to implement session regenerate ID, right? So that's it for today, that we discussed that all about that the session related issues, how we can secure that. It was very easy, only you need to use the simple inbuilt function for that, and this inbuilt function is available in all the language, right? So yes, this is how that we can secure that. So in the next class, we discuss about the cross-site scripting is not there. Yes, cross-site scripting. Right, again, cross-site scripting, we have the simple one function that we have is all about the input validation. We see how we can secure that. So till now, that's it. And if you have any question, any doubt related to this one or any other else, then you can ask me. Otherwise, you can left the meeting. Okay, and related to the recorded and all, you can discuss with management. They will provide you the access. Okay then, bye bye all of you.